Morning. Hello, everyone. I think they're recording now. Welcome to the User's Guide for the Soul. It's a pleasure to have you as we continue our discussion about joy and the power of joy. It's such an amazing thing to be able to harness. So I'm going to catch us up to where we've been. We're starting a new chapter today, chapter 31. We're in this text, Lessons in Tanya. So if you have this version, it's page 415. So the Alter Rebbe, our teacher here on this journey, brought us through a whole course on how to stay in a joyful state, how to deal with any kind of depression that might come up, and how to kind of put it to the side. Because as we keep saying, being in a joyful state is just a powerful stance for any challenge that comes up in our lives. So the first thing we did was we looked at any kind of depression that might arise either because of physical stuff or spiritual stuff. So if you go back to that class, you'll see amazing tools at how to deal with that. Then chapter 27 looked at what if I'm depressed about my inner state? What if I'm depressed about not something that happened to me or something that I've done, but just my general nature? And we also dealt with that as a second piece. 28 was dealt with if I'm depressed because I can't focus properly when I'm praying, and that is a problem. We found tools with that. And then 29 and 30, we looked at this problem of what's called Timtum Halev. Timtum Halev, which is, let's call it apathy. So I've done everything else in our User's Guide for the Soul. I'm functioning at that level, but my heart's just not in it. I'm not excited. I don't have a sense of love and awe. So how do I get myself outside of apathy? And as we said, it was a very unusual strategy. It was about splintering the ego, splintering the animal soul by sitting and really doing a careful stock taking of all the things I've done that I could have done better, let's call it, until my ego isn't quite as smug and it can get out of the way. And then on chapter 30, we dealt with the issue of if I'm really trying to splinter my soul, making sure that I'm never judging anyone around me and thinking, well, at least I'm doing better than that person, right? And the Alter Rebbe took us on a journey to really not just behave humbly in front of everyone we meet, but really to see ourselves very literally as at a much lower level than everyone we meet. And that will also help with this splintering, let's call it, of the heart. So what now, if we've gone through this whole training and we've been doing these things and we've sat and we've perhaps gone through this process of breaking our ego, what kind of emotional state am I probably going to be in? Let's unmute and tell me, if you've done this to some extent, or, you've learned it, or you imagine really doing it in a deep way, what's your state of mind going to be at this point? What would you think?
Miserable. Really. If you have to go around saying, instead of appreciating what other people have, and this one's joyful, this one's lovely, this one's kind, and I'm terrible, what is that? That's the one I don't get, Cantor.
Right. So the Alter Rebbe knows that's where we're at now. We're all, you said it in one word, we're all miserable, because I've looked at myself and the kind of failure that I've been spiritually, and I've crushed my ego, and I've meditated that I'm lower than everyone around me, lower than the lowest of the low, quote unquote. Now I'm miserable, right? Do we want that? Obviously not. Because we start off saying this is a chapter about joy. We don't want to be depressed. So the Alter Rebbe knows this has been a harsh series of lessons. And the Alter Rebbe addresses it by saying at the beginning of this chapter, now even if at this point you're sad, even miserable, what you do. Because I know we've gone through this kind of sidebar, and the result might be now you're feeling sad or miserable. And he's going to talk about the difference between sadness that we might feeling and bitterness, merry root. And that's the tool we're going to use in this chapter to make sure we don't sink in to this state of depression or sadness, because as we did to try and get to joy, right? Obviously, that's not the goal. So this is probably one of the harshest, lowest points in the Tanya. We've done this kind of like Musar style learning, and now the Alter Rebbe is going to sure that we don't stay in a depressed state, because we understand the difference between sadness and bitterness. And also, let me preface the chapter by saying, we say generally that sadness is something that's connected to klipa, right? Which, for those who might be new, klipa is like the superficial shell of life, right? My ego is klipa, right? So the other side, not godliness. Sadness is connected to klipa, and joy is connected to kedusha, to holiness and oneness with God. And that should be clear to us before we start. So let me ask you, why might it be that Kabbalah and Hasidus teaches kind of from every direction that sadness is something that is from klipa and from nefesh bamit in my consciousness, and happiness is something that stems from and connected to holiness and kedusha? Why do you think that might be? I'm curious your thoughts.
I think sadness separates you. Sadness is ego. It's about me, and it separates you from everything, really.
Okay, so one, that it's about ego, but two, your point is that it separates you. And I think, my teacher often says to people, all the most important moments in my life, the ones that make the biggest impression, they're all about moments of oneness, coming together with someone, or with maybe an art form or information, but often just people. So joy, we know intuitively, like you said, Cindy, is connected to those moments of oneness. And yes, sadness, I think, is connected more to separating. I like that. Any other thoughts?
Can you have happiness without knowing sadness?
Yeah, I think we'll get to that. That sometimes you just, you're absorbed in something, and you find yourself in what we call the flow. We talk about that a lot in modern society, that there's a state of flow where all these, stuff is released in your brain that creates great joy. And you weren't thinking about yourself, you didn't even realize, and you look back and you're like, whoa, this makes me happy, right? I wasn't even there to think about it. I was so happy. So yeah, I think you can, and it's connected to this as well. So let me put it in sort of more technical kabbalistic terms. Like Cindy said, anything that involves the ego, that's klipa, right? Klipa means something is there that has an identity that's in the way of pure oneness, right? So it doesn't mean that it's bad. My ego is not evil. It's not malicious. It's just in the way. I exist. And so if I'm there, that's klipa. And what is sadness generally? When I'm sad, I'm focused on what perspective? Am I thinking about, how much I could help other people generally? I'm thinking about what happened to me, right? Rhetorical question. So sadness is one of the most effective ways of sort of wallowing in my self-centered perspective, right? I'm unhappy about my income. I'm unhappy about my health. I'm unhappy about anything else in my life. And it may be legitimate, and someone would look and say, yeah, I'd be unhappy too. But I'm focusing on myself when I'm doing it. So even if, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's definitely connected to the ego. Sadness is always connected to nefesh bamit, and it's always connected to the klipa. Does everybody kind of get that? Joy, however, is always connected to holiness, because joy comes, as we said, when I'm out of the way, right? When you're in the, you want to be focusing on something else to the extent that you kind of vanish, and then you have the state of oneness. And so all the things we're talking about in terms of kedusha, they connect to that as well. We want to be focusing on God's perspective and the perspective of oneness, and that means my ego has to be out of the way. We got a little background. Sorry, someone is talking on the phone. Can we? Great. So as we go on, keep in mind, the reason that we want to focus on joy is because that's the divine aspect of ourselves. The reason I want to avoid sadness is because that's always from the klipa. And this chapter is going to find a way to transform that. So let's dive in. And by the way, this pretty much ends the sort of harsh section. From here, it's up, 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 up. Chapter 32 is this gorgeous thing. The end of this chapter also gives us a beautiful meditation to bring us back to a state of joy. And then after 32, there's such gorgeous things for us to go through them. והנה, אף אם כשיעריך הרבה להעמיק בעניינים הנזכרים לאל, כשעה ושתיים להיות בנמיכת רוח ולב נשבר, יבוא לידי עצבות גדולה, לא יחוש. Go ahead, Cindy. We'll do Cindy, Rick, Mark, Joey, Dan, Noreen, Maxine, Ellen, Beth, Sue Ellen, Paula.
Okay. Even if dwelling long and deeply on the above-mentioned matters for an hour or two, to be lowly of spirit and contrite of heart leads one to profound depression. Let him not be perturbed.
Sorry, and after Paula, Doreen, and then Karen. So I'll close as we go through. Right, so he's saying, I know this was harsh, but if you find yourself miserable now, don't worry, here's the tool we're going to use, right? Rick.
True atzvut, depression, derives from the realm of klipa noga, not of holiness.
So as we said, depression by nature, it's not holiness, it's klipa, right? I may be depressed over very lofty things and feel like it's really, you know, I'm such a refined person being depressed about spiritual status, but that's still just another form of ego, right? In Cetus, and you just want to stay away from it. כי בצד הקדושה עוז וחדווה במקומו, ואין השכינה שורה אלא מתוך שמחה, וכן לדבר הלכה וכו'. Go ahead, Mark. Mark, you want to hit your space bar, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, either on the screen or with a space bar?
Yeah, I'm going to have to pass, but are we on 31, chapter 31?
Chapter 31, page 416. Did Maya send you
I did. I'm looking at it. 416. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
For concerning.
Okay, sorry. For concerning the realm of holiness, whoops, it is written, strength and gladness are in his place. And likewise, the divine presence abides only in the man's joy, and the same joy is required for the study of the halakha.
Very good, Mark. Right, so here we have
Thank you.
Tanya. If we quote something from the Torah, that's seen as a proof. So he's giving us nice quotes. What is God's place? Strength and gladness, right? And from Shabbat, from the Talmud, that Shekhinah can only be here when we're happy, right? When we're together, when we're happy. But also we understand from ourselves, focus on the other, focusing on oneness, that tends to get me to joy. Focusing on the self, now I'm in klipa, right? And that's going to be, that's where depression is, it's comfortable. Ela shimatzvut hi mimile dishmaya hi mibchinat tov Joey, yeah.
Comes from the realm of klipo nega, except that if depression is due to spiritual matters arising from one's realization of a spiritual failings, it stems from the good contained in Klipa Nega. For as mentioned in chapter 1, Klipa Nega contains both good and evil. The evil in Nega is the source of ordinary depression, and the positive element in Nega gives rise to the spiritually motivated depression. Yet even the element of good contained in Nega is, after all, Klipa.
Right, so if I'm depressed because, you know, for something inappropriate, that's pure klipa. If I'm depressed because I feel like I can't pray properly, okay, that's klipa noga, but it's still klipa. So it's still my ego, it's still self-centered, but hidden in there is a little bit of light, and it's possible to kind of extract that using the techniques we're describing and elevate it. Because yeah, at least I'm depressed about something that you know, is it's worthy of being depressed about, but I don't want to be depressed. I want to do something else, which will get us to bitterness. ולכן כתב אריזל זיכרונו לברכה שאפילו דאגת הבנות אינה ראויה כי אם בשעת הידוי.
For this reason, the Arizal writes that even worry over one's sins is appropriate only during confession.
Right, so that was part of our preach that we want to schedule depression, time limited, at a time when I'm prepared and approach it in a certain way. As we said, we want to tell our sins how great God is. We don't want to tell God how great our sins are. So doing it, make an appointment at a scheduled time, before the bedtime in our case. I say, okay, issue, let's come back, let's have an honest conversation. Usually it doesn't come back, but if it does, schedule amount of time, and I tell my problem how great God is that I've kind of cut myself off from with this. I don't go on to God about, oh, I'm so horrible, and wallow in that, right? So there's a limited way of using it, but it's only in a scheduled way, as we learn. But
not during prayer and Torah study. These must be conducted with the joy deriving exclusively from the realm of holiness, as opposed to frivolity and the like.
Right? So that does not apply when we are at temple or on virtual services, and we think, oh, poor me, I'm not in a state that I want to be. It does not apply right now when we're learning Tanya. Right now, if something occurs to my mind, I want to just schedule it for later, and I want to approach this with joy and enthusiasm. That's the way that the Shekhinah can best enter. That's the way that all of us can have the state of oneness. Karen is asking, how can I uncancel my picture? Karen? I think you figured it out, right? Okay, let me know, Karen, if you have a question. I think we're good. So I definitely don't want to do it when I'm learning Torah. I don't want to do it when I'm praying. We're at Maxine.
Yet this is precisely the method of humbling the Sitra Ahara through something of its own species.
I think we may have lost you. Can you go again? Yet this is?
What?
Sorry, you cut out. So if you'd read that again, please. Yet.
Oh, I cut out. Yet this is precisely the method of humbling the Sitra Ahara through something of its own species and kind. Example, the Sitra Ahara is most effectively attacked by utilizing the good contained within it as a weapon against itself.
So sometimes if I have one problem, I want to take the opposite and just flush it out and overwhelm it, right? So you think if I'm sad, okay, think about something that makes me happy and just become happy, right? How easy is that? But it doesn't always work, as we know, because if the root of the sadness is deep within me, then maybe I can replace it for a bit, but it's not going to really transform it totally, right? So to get to the root of the sadness, we have to engage in not chesed, but gevura, right? And within gevura, there is a holy kind of flow that really the sadness stems from, right? So I want to get to the source of the issue and use that to not just kind of overwhelm it, but to really flush it out, right? So if I had a leak in my house, and there was water all over the floor, I might say, okay, put in a sump pump and get the water out. And I guess that would help, but I'd want to get a plumber and go find the leak and plug it up, right? The source of the problem is more powerful to fix the situation. So the situation being sadness, the Alter Rebbe is going to show us what the source of that is and how we can go directly to that to transform the sadness into something productive that has motion, that has vitality.
As our sages expressed it, from the forest itself comes the handle for and the axe which fells the forest, and in a similar vein, he encountered one of his own kind.
Right, so my wife does a lot of homeopathy, and there's a well-known saying, you need a bit of the hair of the dog that bit you, right? What heals you in homeopathy is a little hair of the dog that bit you. So they might take a remedy of something that is related to whatever energy in your life, and by introducing that energy into your system can now reorient itself and fix the problem. However, so same thing happens in Kabbalah. we say, yeah, if you're sad, you might approach it with chesed, with joy, and overwhelm it. But here we're going to take the wood from the forest and make it into an axe to actually like chop down the forest itself. You need to take something from the actual scenario and issue to resolve the issue at its root. ועל זה נאמר בכל עת מותר והיתרון היא השמחה הבאה אחר העצב כדלקמן. We're at Sue Ellen, if you would. Oh, yeah. Or Paula, you're reading today?
Of the sadness resulting from the
Yeah.
contemplation of one's spiritual state, it is written, in every sadness there will be profit. The profit lies in the joy which follows the sadness, as will be explained later in what way the sadness itself leads to joy.
All right, so all this exercise, as we said along the way, was not to break myself and be a nothing and live life in sadness, God forbid. It was to find a more intense joy once I get my ego out of the way, right? So that's the profit that's going to come out of this. באמת אין לב נשבר ומרירות הנפש על ריחוקה מאור פני השם והתלבשותה בסטרא אחרא נקראים בשם עצבות כלל לשון הקודש. Paula, let us know if you want to read. Otherwise, Doreen, go ahead. In truth. Or if you'll take that in truth, however.
You want me to take
Okay,
it?
and yeah, good. Karen, go ahead.
In truth, however, the state of being contrite of heart and bitter of soul, remorseful over one's remoteness from God and over the fact that one's soul is clothed in the Sitra Achra, can by no means be described in the holy tongue by the term, I don't know how to say it.
Atzvut.
Good.
Yeah. So here he's going to make the key distinction of this chapter, and that's merirut, or is bitter. So I might have a bitterness about my, or atzvut, which is a feeling of depression, right? So what's the difference for us between feeling bitter about something and feeling depressed about something? How would you distinguish, how would you characterize kind of where you're at in those two states?
If you feel bitter, you might want to try to retaliate. But
right.
if you're just
retaliate, so you have energy, right? Yeah. So maybe when I feel bitter, I'm like, I want to just go at this situation or this thing, whatever it is. I'm not going to sit passively. I'm going to, you say retaliate, right? But whatever it is, and retaliate maybe will go to a negative place, but I'm moving, right? I'm retaliating. Okay, who is being sadness and bitterness for you guys?
His bitterness has, I forgot what I was going to say, an aspect of anger in it.
We're dealing with Gevura, right? So we're saying we're not bringing chesed, we're not bringing loving kindness to deal with this. We're bringing strength and might. So there's always a chance that it goes into anger, because what is anger kabbalistically? If you remember our earlier chapters, anger is Gevura, strength, as it's used, as it's channeled from nefesh b'amit. So for sure, when I'm bitter, one knee-jerk reaction of the animal soul is to say, I feel bitter about this. Let's get angry, right? Let's because I can't sit with this, and that'll release the energy. That'll solve the problem. So we can get angry out of bitterness too, and that's in our system. I know we've debated this a little bit. Anger is never considered a useful tool. We want to use the divine soul's channeling. But again, when I'm angry, I'm not passive either, right? So I'm getting at the key distinction we want to make, which is when I'm depressed, when I'm sad, I'm focusing on myself, and I'm just getting less and less energy and vitality, and I'm just wallowing in that. And I will just, that's a static situation, right? Nothing is moving. When I'm bitter, I say, this is just wrong. My inner state is not in the right place. my environment is not the right, whatever it is, whatever the problem is, you feel that you can't sit with it and you do something, and you're now building energy to actually move, change. And that's the key we want here. So if I'm feeling sad and depressed because of the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters, now I'm just going to sit in my depression, and that's just klipa. If I'm feeling bitter, like I've gone through this whole process and looked at myself, and how can I even sit with myself given the state of my spiritual affairs? Okay, I don't necessarily want to get angry because of that, but I'm not going to there and leave it be. I'm going to act to change. And that's the key thing we need. If I'm feeling sad or depressed, I might sit there for another week or month, and I'm just going to be in the same state. If I'm feeling bitter, guaranteed today or tomorrow, or at least this week, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try and change the thing. And we want to steer our energy in the right way, but we want to get that energy going, right? So the bitterness, it takes the car that's been sitting in the garage for 6 months. You're not sure if it's going to start, and it starts the engine, and you got the running, and you're like, okay, let's take this thing for a ride. Let's hope we go somewhere good, but we're going somewhere. So we always want to take sadness and transform it to bitterness. On 418, ki atzvut hi shelibo metumtam ke'even ve'ein chayut belibo. So Linda, do you want to read for us? Do you have our text with us? We're on 418 if you'd like to read. Or let us know if you want to join in. Let's go back to the beginning. Cindy, go ahead and for atzvut.
For atzvut means that one's heart is as dull as a stone, and there is no vitality, arousal of feeling in his heart.
So the issue we were dealing with was timtum halev, was apathy, right? And if I get depressed because of what I did to get over the apathy, that's going to lead me back to the apathy, and we get one of these cycles that just goes down, right? So depression, it's klipa, it's self-centered, and that's what's going to get me back to this like timtum halev business, which we want to clear it out. Aval mirut v'lev nishba adarabba harei yesh chayut b'libo hitpa'el v'lehitmarmer. Rick?
But bitterness, mirut, and contrition are just the opposite, since the very fact that one is moved to be embittered is itself a sign of life.
Right? I think we know this intuitively. Someone that's just depressed, they could sit and watch TV all day, do nothing. Someone that's bitter, they got a fire under them of some kind, right? So they're gonna work at it. Rak shehi chayut mibchinat gevurot kedushot, ve'asimcha mibchinat chasadim ki halev kalul mishtehen. Go ahead, Mark. Except
this vitality derives from the holy attributes of serenity, Gevurah, and therefore expresses itself as bitterness, whereas joy derives from the holy attributes of kindness, chassidim, from the heart contains both these attributes, kindness and severity.
Right, so for those of us that have learned the Kabbalah, I got my emotions, chesed, gevurah, and tiferet, we'll call the three main ones: loving kindness, strength, and compassion. And we're dealing here with just chesed and gevurah, loving kindness and strength. And we know joy comes from the divine soul engaging in chesed, right? When I act with loving kindness and contribute and give and share, it makes me happy, and that's straightforward. And if I can get on that side and I'm feeling it in my heart, good. We don't need these chapters. But if something's in the way and I'm depressed, now just trying to be happy may not get at it. We have to actually engage gevurah. And when the divine soul engages gevurah, that's a sense of bitterness. That's like, this is wrong for me. I can be better than this. I can change this. I'm not happy with this. Poor me. It's, how can I add to this? How can I help change what I have to do to improve the situation? Because I can't sit with this.
That's a question.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is without bitterness, you're never going to change out of your sadness.
If the problem is depression, and if the techniques we've learned in the past 5 chapters don't work, which are, learning everything that happens is a blessing and divine providence, or learning to see that when I have an inner failing, it's actually an opportunity to serve God even better. You can look back at those classes. If none of those strategies worked, and I'm still here just apathetic, then yes, the Alter Rebbe is saying that's a very problematic state to be in. It's considered a very big problem in terms of Chassidus and Kabbalah, and the tool that I need at that point, I'm not going to change unless I use the tool of bitterness, because I'm contemplating godliness, making me happy and excited. Contemplating my role, around me, it's not making me happy. I'm actually doing things. I'm still getting up and praying and coming to temple and helping people and giving charity, but I'm not connected inside to it. So there's something stuck. And yeah, at that point, if I'm just depressed and nothing that I'm doing is causing flow, then bitterness is the thing that will break that and get me through it. Sorry, where am I? I lost my place. Someone help me?
419 on the top.
The top.
That time.
לעתים צריך לעורר בחינת גבורות הקדושות כדי להמתיק הדינים שהם בחינת נפש הבמית ויצר הרע ששולט חס ושלום על האדם.
At times, one must arouse the holy attributes of severity, gevurah, in order to temper or sweeten stern judgments, which in this context denote the animal soul and the evil inclination, whenever the latter dominates a man, God forbid.
Right, so if my animal soul is acting up and getting me depressed, I actually have to sweeten at its source. I have to change by using the divine soul's aspect of Gevurah, which translates as I'm bitter for a good reason and in a good direction, right? Because I'm not helping other people. I could do better. I could be a better father, better cantor, better friend, and better Jew. Make sense? Ki ein hadinim nimtakin ela b'shorshan. You want to mute there, Dan? You want to unmute?
For stern judgments, that is, restraints on one's spiritual well-being, can only be sweetened by means of their source.
Yeah, and this is a key reality in Kabbalah, that we want to go to the source of something to transform it, rather than go to the opposite to transform it. So let's look at how they describe it in Lessons in Tanya. Dan, if you go on, all evil.
All evil is simply a degenerate form of the attribute of severity, gevurot, that derives from the realm of holiness. Myriad contractions, tzimtzumim, and descents of this attribute transform it to evil, the evil of Kalipa. Naturally, this includes also the Sitra Akra of one's animal soul and his evil impulse. In order to elevate or sweeten evil, to return evil to the realm of holiness, it is necessary to bring its source to bear on it. In terms of one divine service, this means crushing one's evil impulse by merarut, bitter remorse, which derives its vitality from the holy attribute of severity, the source of the evil impulse.
Right, so we're dealing with Gevurah. Gevurah is the source of the sadness, and it's descended and sort of changed itself to now function on the Klipa side, standard egotistical sadness and depression. And I can use Chesed to overwhelm. I have to go to the source because that's more effective. Like if I have a device that's making all kinds of noise in my house and it's bothering me, I can take another one and turn up some beautiful music and drown it out. Maybe that'd work. But I can go unplug the device and that'll work better, right? So the source of the vitality of any depression comes from Gevurah, and we want to find the root of it, Gevurah of the divine soul, which is bitterness, and that will root out the depression. ולכן אמרו לברכה לעולם ירגיז אדם יצר הטוב.
For this reason, our sages said, one should always incite the good inclination to anger against the evil inclination. Since anger stems from the attribute of severity, it's capable of sweetening the evil inclination.
And I'm glad you read this, because now when you go, aha, we can use anger, right? Even though I said we never want to use anger. Here's a case where in a limited way, we've touched on this, sometimes I actually want to get my good inclination to have a tantrum and yell at my evil inclination, right? And really in my inner dialogue, and say, how dare you get in the way of things that need to be done in the world and get in the way of the light of this divine soul? How can you be so self-centered? I don't know if you want to do it, but that's an exercise that is suggested in places in the Tanya, here and there, to try that. And that is where we're taking the gvura of the divine soul and using it to tamp down this depressive flow of the animal soul.
The two negatives make a positive.
Right, a higher negative can cancel out a lower negative. Maxine?
The word always, one should always incite, is however to be understood in a qualified sense. Joy, not severity, is usually the proper setting for divine service. That's when our sages state that one should always incite the good inclination. This means how whenever he finds it necessary for himself. As for example, when one sees that the arrogance of his animal soul does not permit the light of his divine soul to penetrate his heart, causing consume halal.
Yeah, so he's pointing out that the quote from the Talmud says, "Lit olam," we should always, right? And the author was saying, well, always means, yeah, always in this situation. In this situation, that's what'll help, but not always like just when I'm learning or praying or cooking breakfast for my family.
However, the appropriate time for this anger of the divine soul at the animal soul, meaning the time which is opportune and fitting for most people.
Right, so when should we do this? When should we engage bitterness? Maybe, give the animal soul a scolding, kind of just start myself out of this depressed state of bitterness. Is
when one is in any case depressed over mundane matters, or just so, without any discernible cause.
Yeah, so when should I do it? One suggestion we had was, at bedtime Shema, good time to do it. But another is, look, if depression is really circling around there, then, okay, at a time when you're depressed about something, something in life is getting me down, and this is bothering me. Okay, since that energy is there, now's a good time to go and engage in bitterness and start to, give a little shove at the animal soul and toggle it from the self-centered flow of gvura, which can be depression, to an other-centered flow of gvura, which is bitterness. How can I help? What can I do to get out of this? We're almost at the end of this section, guys. We've got a few lines left.
Thank goodness.
What's that?
Thank goodness, this is tough.
You and me both, Rick, yeah. Azai hishar kosher lehaper ha'etzev liot mimare de chushbana and he's Karla El. Karen, I think we missed you. You want to read that? This is an opportune time. Yeah, if you'll unmute.
Great. Okay. This is an opportune time for redirecting the depression towards spirituality matters, to be among the masters of accounts mentioned above, i.e., to engage in soul searching and spiritual stock taking.
Right. So that was chapter 29, where he went through, said, this is how I failed here. This is how I failed here. This is how I'm lower than this person. This is how, and you go through and really microscope, floodlight, honestly look at your own life and your own failings objectively and go ahead, take bitterness and hammer a little at your animal soul. And you'll see this depression doesn't like that. It doesn't like sitting and focusing on the negativity. It'll quickly flip back, and now you'll say, okay, how do I get out of this? What do I do? How can I help? So I think we want to go back to Cindy.
to fulfill the previously mentioned teachings of our sages that one should always incite his good inclination against his evil inclination, since both of these paths harness the attribute of severity.
Yeah. So that, this is our technique. Use bitterness and incite your other centered self to direct that bitterness self-centered self. And actually, depression is a very tough thing. And obviously, we're not talking about clinical depression where someone needs a professional and needs patient. So to be clear, we're not talking about clinical depression, but just everyday, down and out, self-pity, depressed, low energy. This works very well with that. You spend 15, 20 minutes kind of inciting your divine soul to kind of scold your animal soul about its own failings, and you'll see the depression doesn't really hang around very much. It
will thus also be rid of the depression brought on by mundane matters.
Ta-da! I got to dance that. And that's how you do it. You get rid of your depression. Any questions about that? All right, let's go on. Okay, we got through it. That's at the end of that kind of section. And now we're going to I want to introduce you to the meditation he's going to give us that will take all of the work we did to kind of crush our ego and get rid of depression from every angle tool now. I mean, I haven't seen it. I wish an actual course, a program for people with just normal depression, because I think people seriously go through this. Depression doesn't, and the idea, trying to find something that makes me happy, and you can stay in it for weeks and months. It can be really, really, and these chapters, they're a little brutal, but they're effective. So now he gives us a meditation that will take all this and bring us back to the side of holiness and klipa and inspiration, and from here, it's beautiful stuff. ואחר כך יבוא לידי שמחה אמיתית. דהיינו שזאת ישיב על ליבו, אל ליבו לנחמו בכפליים אחר הדברים והאמת, האלה הנזכרים לאל. We at, is it Mark?
He will then arrive at a true joy as follows. In the order to comfort his heart in double measure, let him in the wake above words of truth concerning his lowly spiritual stature tell himself the following.
Right, so if I've gotten to this state, and here's the meditation that will kind of get me back to just my normal, serving God with joy. לאמור ליבו, אמת הוא כן, בלי ספק, שאני רחוק מאוד מהשם בתכלית, משוקץ, מתועב.
Let him say to his heart, indeed, without a doubt, I am far removed, utterly remote from God, and am despicable, contemptible, and so on.
Yes, it's a little bit left, right? So I've seen the truth of this. I get it. It's my reality. I've gone through this all. I see my state. כל זה הוא אני לבדי, הוא הגוף עם נפש החיונית שבו. With Dan, you want to unmute yourself, please, Dan?
There. But all this is true only of me, that is my body and the animating soul within it.
Right, so who was that log that was being splintered? That was me. That was my ego. That was my animal soul. So the part of me that I now have a clear vision of, that's just my animal soul. It's just the klipa that makes up my consciousness. Yet, אבל מכל מקום יש בקרבי חלק השם. ממש, שישנו אפילו בקל שבקלים, שהיא נפש אלוקית, ניצוץ אלוקות, ממש, המלובש בה להחיותה. Noreen?
Yet within me there is a veritable part of God, which is present even in the most worthless of my fellows, so that even if I am no better than he, I still have this part of God within me, namely the divine soul and the spark of godliness itself clothed in it, animating me.
And so here's where he's actually going to get us to a state of joy higher than we could have gotten to before we went through this process. I see now my true state, that I should be humble before everybody, that I'm lower than everyone around me. Hi, Maya, sorry. I see that clearly, but still, we all share one thing, and that's we have a divine soul, and that divine soul is a spark, an actual spark of God. As we said when we first introduced it, there's a piece of God that is traveling around, that is at the core of every one of my experiences through my whole life with me. That's my highest identity. And just like all the other people around me that I'm lower than, there's a spark of God going around in my mind, in my heart, in all my actions, experiencing my whole life, and as it were, trapped within my own ego. Rak shehi b'chinat galut. Maxine, I think?
It is only that when the body and animating soul are in such a lowly state, the divine soul is in exile within them.
And so if I'm just depressed and I'm down, or I'm through that now, but I'm still in a lowly state, I'm just self-centered and I can't get it right, and I'm lower than everyone else, who is experiencing all that? God. So when I make every choice, when I wake up and I don't dedicate myself as I should, and I miss opportunities or I mess things up, God's in there going, oi! You know, I created this soul, this smolash, and look at the opportunity I gave him, and he does what? And even if I'm numb to it, God's feeling all the frustration and pain and sadness of what I should have done that day and how better I could have. Just going, oh no. You remember when we watch the old sitcoms and you see it coming 20 minutes out? They start setting up the situation and it's just getting worse and worse, and you're along for the ride and you just want, no, just call that person and tell them this or that'll be better. And you have this growing frustration watching the sitcom that it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and you get more. That's God trapped in my consciousness, watching me mess it up day after day, right? So the lower I am, the more important it should be that spark of godliness is now freed and elevated, right? It's not just, okay, God's trapped in my consciousness just like everyone around me. I now see I'm the lowest person I know, and God's trapped in that, right? It's the lowest place. So I'm more excited to free a captive if I know they're in a horrible dungeon with terrible conditions and being tortured. Or is it more important to free captive if they're in a civilized jail, being taken care of, you know, in a justice system? Obviously, I feel more passion about freeing somebody that's jailed somewhere horrible with no human rights, right? That person, you know, go in, get them out, do whatever you can. So same thing that we're doing here. The more I recognize that my state is so low, the more passionately I'm going to feel that it's my job to elevate my divine soul out of that lowness. That's where the joy will come in. Let's do a little more. If so, v'im ken adarabba kol ma shani b'tachlit harichuk me'Hashem v'ti'uv v'shikutz. Is it? I forget where we are. Ellen? Yeah.
If so, then on the contrary, the further I am removed from God, and the more despicable and contemptible.
So the more I went down into bitterness, Barachamanut aleha gedolah. Karen?
And the deeper in exile in my divine soul, and all the more it is to be pitied.
Right, so the more I'm removed, the more honestly I see my own state, the more I'm going to say, whoa, oh, look at what that divine soul is experiencing. I mean, those other people, you know, are giving it a ride, but look, I'm worse than them, right? I'm below them. I'm here in Netanya class and I'm still doing it, you know? I'm in a lower state. And the Shekhinah, that spark of God that's in me, is going along with the ride, going like, you read the Tanya. You sat and meditated, right? You went, you prayed at Temple Israel, and you're still doing this? Come on, let me out, right? So we're actually using the past several chapters to now ramp up my sense of enthusiasm and drive to self back to perhaps, beyond Bainani. ולזה אשים כל מגמתי וחפצי להוציאה ולהעלותה מגלות זה להשיבה לבית אביה כנעוריה.
Therefore, I will make it my entire aim and desire to extricate it from the exile and to return her to her father's house, to restore it to its source and original state, as in her youth.
And this quote is talking about the daughter of a Kohen, by the way. So he's pulling from, a Kohen's family is able to eat certain sacrifices. And if a daughter marries a non-Kohen family, now she's part of that clan, call it, and can't do the sacrifice anymore. But if God forbid, whatever situation, if the daughter is no longer married and now comes back to her family's house, now she can again be part of the Kohen tribe and those sacrifices, right? So it's a beautiful example where he's talking about, our divine soul coming back to that elevated state of holiness, where it's connected to God fully, so to speak. It always is, but it's flowing into consciousness. It's aware of its role, able to, fully feel its feelings in the heart and be restored to that state of oneness, as opposed to being in exile within the choices of my ego.
I just make a comment.
Yeah, Mark.
Or question. When I'm reading this paragraph, it sounds to me that it's like you're returning your godly soul back to its original state, which is pureness. No?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, pureness in the sense that it's not being cut off by the ego. It's not having to function or be exiled in a state of mind that believes it has its own existence. So pureness and oneness, that's just now godliness is what we're about. It's transparent. We want to do our best to help those around us. The divine soul goes, right? Let's get to work, and hopefully more and more of our lives now just flow with that and reflect that, as opposed to reflecting that self-centered thing that depression was all about. קודם שנתלבשה בגופי נכללת באורו יתברך ונכחדת עמו בתכלית. As it was. Where are we at? Who's reading?
Back here.
Pardon me?
Am I back?
Okay.
Is it me? As it was before being clothed in my body, when it was completely absorbed in God's light and united with him.
Right, so exactly as you're saying, Mark. Our souls came from a place where they were in heaven. Our divine souls were fully aware that they are simply one spark of actual God, and they were aware of that light fully before they came into the body. And then they all take this journey down, 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 and they get locked in a sort of battle in our body with this animal, which is the ego consciousness. And we can even forget that. And we can be just lost in that ego exile. And yet this chapter and these meditations give us a chance to free, to have it elevate back up to that state where more and more my consciousness is connected to what that soul felt like when it was in heaven. And the excitement that soul had to come and do good things and grow and help and transform, I can live like that, and my divine soul can be back as if it was looking from its spot in heaven and not looking from my own ego-centered consciousness. So let's do a little meditation, because we always want to be doing our our long short path, because it's a good practice. So if we put our books away and find ourselves just in a comfortable spot, let's slow down our breathing. Start our 4-count breathing with breathing in, 2, 3, 4, and stay there, 2, 3. Well, it goes to show you, I'm not sure at what point my meditation was cut off, but I had a good meditation. I hope well. Thank you for joining us for the User's Guide to the Soul. Sorry we had a technical glitch and dropped off at the end, but we'll see you next week when we continue our chapter on finding this intense joy out of overcoming depression. Yeah? See you guys soon.